Series over the next few weeks here on BBC4, starting with Freddie and the Dreamers on Blue Peter and Pinky and Perky doing the twist. Marvellous. Tomorrow at 7. But stay with us tonight for your actual news bulletin from 1967, reporting the defection of Stalin's daughter and Princess Margaret's wedding. Next.
I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own. My life is my own.
What do you want?
My life is my own.
Information. We want information. Why do you want?
That would be telling information.
You won't get it. I am not a number. I am a free man.
On BBC4, the news from 1967 with Robert Dougal.
Svetlana Stalin is hidden tonight somewhere in Switzerland after her flight from Russia via Delhi and Rome. News from Washington is that President Johnson personally ordered that she should not be taken to the United States so as to avoid straining U.S.-Soviet relations. Our Washington correspondent, Charles Wheeler.
Svetlana's first American encounter in Delhi is said to have been with a U.S. Marine Corps guard at the front door of the embassy. This was at 10 o'clock last Monday night. The guard called a duty officer. The visitor then explained that she was Stalin's daughter and wanted asylum. Finally, she reached the ambassador, Mr. Chester Bowles, and he accepted her story. The Russian ambassador then made strong representations for Miss Stalin's return to the government of India. And in the course of one stormy interview at the Indian External Affairs Ministry, the Indians were accused of allowing the Americans to abduct Svetlana. All this was reported back to Washington, and a prompt decision was taken to fly Svetlana out of Delhi while the administration decided what to do about her. In the end, the president decided that she should be persuaded to choose some other refuge than the United States, at least for the present.
During the week, she traveled from Delhi to Rome. Early today, she flew into Geneva aboard a chartered flight, traveling under her mother's maiden name, Elilova. From Geneva, Alan McGregor.
Emerging from low rain clouds, the Viscount, with Svetlana Elilova on board, touched down and taxied along the runway to the lane leading to a part of the airport usually reserved for freight planes. Steps were hurriedly trundled into place. Two plainclothes Swiss security officials bounded up them. They came out of the plane and down the steps with a short, stoutish, auburn-haired woman in a green raincoat. She looked tired, drawn, and rather bewildered. She smiled slightly but said nothing as reporters pushed in to ask questions. In under 10 seconds, she was into the car with the two officials. It accelerated away and left the airport through a gate usually reserved for service vehicles.
Swiss authorities stressed that she had not asked for political asylum, but simply temporary permission to rest. They said they were satisfied she had never indulged in political activity. This permission is valid for anything up to 12 months. Soccer and the fifth round of the FA Cup. In Liverpool, more than 60,000 people packed the Everton ground this evening to see the home team beat Liverpool 1-0. Another 40,000 watched the game on closed-circuit television at Liverpool's ground.
The good-humoured crowds filed into both grounds without incident. Everton's at Goodison Park was packed with a capacity of 64,000, but Tots had difficulty in selling tickets to fans who arrived late. A mile away at Liverpool's ground, over 40,000 people watched a live television relay of the match on giant screens. High winds split one, but 7 remained intact. After the derby, the crowds dispersed without incident.
And at the other ties, Birmingham put Arsenal out with a goal 7 minutes from time, and Chelsea are through with a 2-0 win over Sheffield United. But Manchester City and Ipswich must meet again next Tuesday. The other two teams through so far, Sheffield Wednesday with a 3-1 win at Norwich, and Tottenham, who beat Bristol City 2-0. Nottingham and Swindon replay on Tuesday, and Sunderland and Leeds on Wednesday. There were 2 drawn games in the Scottish Cup third round, but Celtic beat Queen's Park 5-3, and Dundee had a 1-0 win over Dunfermline. The leader of the House of Commons, Mr. Richard Crossman, spoke about Labour's differences of opinion when he addressed a party regional conference at Bury St Edmunds. He said that while there was talk of disagreement in the government, there was nothing more striking than the disagreement in the opposition. At the Conservative Party's local government conference in London, the leader of the opposition, Mr. Edward Heath, said the votes lost by the government at this week's by-elections were protest votes against stagnation. And all the indications were that Britain was facing another 2 years of stagnation and siege economy. The Labour MP for Oldham West, Mr. Leslie Hale, said today he had been misreported on some criticisms of the government. He had made them at a private meeting in his constituency last night when he announced his intention of retiring. A number of humorous anecdotes had been taken out of context. Well, Jim Biddulph asked Mr. Hale what his plans are.
Well, my plans are perfectly clear. I've said for a long time that I have been gravely ill, that my wife is not well, and that I feel the time has come when I ought to hand over, or at least permit the Oldham Labour Party to have time to arrange for a successor.
British military authorities in Aden say there's no reason for service families to keep their children at school in Britain over the Easter holidays. Only yesterday, the British High Commission advised parents to think seriously before having their children visit them. From Aden, David Tyndall reports on the situation.
Troops moving into Aden's trouble centre, the Crater district, have been given orders to shoot any suspected terrorist who refuses to stop after 2 warning calls in Arabic. But it isn't usually until a grenade is thrown that the patrols have the slightest clue as to the enemy's whereabouts. Their favourite vantage points for lobbing missiles at the troops are the rooftops, and in this shantytown territory, they've got plenty of choice. By now, the soldiers know that as soon as they see a grenade is being hurled in their direction, they have no more than a couple of seconds to lie flat on their faces. If they do this, then more often than not, they're safe, because the blast from these grenades invariably goes upwards, roughly in the shape of a cone. With the latest terrorist attacks in this teeming Arab area, the army now makes their patrols 2 platoons strong, about 50 men in all. It takes the patrol just over an hour to cover the district quickly, and during that time, there's rarely need for a single word of command. Each man knows what he must do, and the possible consequences should he forget.
The Armenian manuscripts, which were to be auctioned in London, are on their way back to Jerusalem. Wrapped in brown paper, the 23 volumes were handed over at Sotheby's this morning. Lord John Carr, a director of Sotheby's, returned the manuscripts after a personal appeal from the Patriarch of Jerusalem. The books, worth as much as £500,000, left London Airport with Bishop Al-Jemyan. Jim Biddulph asked the bishop if he knew their seller's identity.
Well, I think so.
Are you prepared to disclose who it is?
The Armenian Patriarchate will issue an official statement about all the matter during the next week, and it will be sent to all the newspapers, officially signed by the Patriarch. Well, Your Lordship, yes. I thank you again.
The executive of West Germany's extreme right-wing party, the NPD, confirmed tonight that they've decided to unseat their chairman, Fritz Thielen. He's been regarded as a moderate in NPD terms. Orders Herr Thielen made, expelling 8 far-right party members, including Adolf von Tudden, the deputy chairman, were revoked by tonight's executive meeting. Princess Margaret and Lord Snowdon are now in Nassau for their holiday in the Bahamas. They'll be staying there for 9 days. The princess was reunited with her husband at New York's Kennedy Airport after being parted for 6 weeks while Lord Snowdon was working in Japan and America. It was during Lord Snowdon's absence that rumours began of a rift in their 7-year-old marriage. They were strongly denied by Lord Snowdon. The couple posed for photographs, but reporters, hoping for an informal news conference, were disappointed. China. The Peking government has expelled 2 Russian diplomats, accusing them of political persecution of Chinese employees at the Soviet embassy. And in another incident, China claims that when the Peking-Moscow train arrived in the Soviet Union last month, the Russians confiscated over 200 volumes of Chairman Mao's writings. A strong Chinese protest note claimed the books were removed on the orders of the Russian government and hadn't been returned. Vietnam. American bombers from Thailand have again raided the North's biggest steel works. All the planes are reported to have returned. But today, the Americans released film of how many pilots are saved after being shot down. A Sky Raider fighter goes in first to give covering fire. A helicopter is guided to the clearing where the pilot's waiting, and a member of the crew is winched down on a lifeline to bring him up. The whole rescue is controlled from a recovery center miles away in Saigon. Helicopters often spend hours flying high above the jungle, waiting for the coded signal that tells them they're needed. And the Defense Department says that many pilots have been saved from right under the rifles of the enemy. India's Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, has announced that former Finance Minister Morarji Desai has agreed to call off his bid for the Indian Premiership. He'll be given a senior cabinet portfolio, and Mrs. Gandhi said he had pledged her his unqualified support. Mrs. Gandhi was first challenged by Mr. Desai in the Indian leadership crisis last year. She'll be formally re-elected tomorrow. A big police hunt is still going on in East Anglia after the murder early today of a farmer at Outwell near Wisbeach. A gang wearing stocking masks and armed with a shotgun broke into the house belonging to the farmer, 60-year-old Mr. John Orger, and they stole a safe. They tied him up, and he was later found dead in his garden. Police said there had been considerable violence. The farmer's wife, who's 59, was also bound and gagged, but not injured. Police say they want to interview 3 men, all in their 20s and slimly built. They have a strong local accent. Rescue teams are working tonight to reach a potholer who fell over 200 feet down a mine shaft near Coleford in Gloucestershire. His companion got back to the surface and alerted the police. It's expected the rescue attempt will last several hours. Cricket, and at Bridgetown, the rest of the world team beat Barbados by 262 runs on the 4th day of their 5-day match. The scores: rest of the world 308 and 276, Barbados 84 and 238. Rugby, in today's international at Cardiff Arms Park, Ireland beat Wales by 3 points to 0. The Irish try by wing three-quarter Duggan came in the first 3 minutes. Peter West, the commentator.
So it's Ireland's ball, and Roger Young, dental student from the north, with his old sparring partner today, his Lions sparring partner as well, the great Mike Gibson. That's a nice heel. Good strike by Ken Kennedy. Here goes Gibson coming in. Oh, I say, look at Gibson! My word, and he bounces into Brown Price, and it's another good possession. Good ball here. Jerry Walsh to kick for his wing. This is a try for Ireland, is it? Yes, it's a try!
And that was the final score, 3-0, and that's all from us tonight. Now here's the weather, and good night.